My name is Charlie Joseph Jaquez Jr. Don't name your children Junior. I was born in Alamosa, but I've lived here in San Luis all my life except for university and the military. And my father, my grandfather, my great grandfather all were born and died within a 15-mile radius here, and so me, I just haven't died yet. The My family, uh, of the original settlers that came to San Luis, there was come on, when his name comes up, I'll tell you. But there was two of the Jaquez that were of the original settlers that came to San Luis, and they came from the San Juan Pueblo in New Mexico, which is Española country, and interestingly, I think the Jaquez gene originates in the Caucasus Mountains, which is like in southern Russia, Georgia. And the Jaquez mother, that's where she came from. And that the Jaquez gene then moved west to the Mediterranean area, and to Spain, and then from Spain to Mexico, and from Mexico north here to the USA. And so when the settlers were here, and some of my ancestors were here, they were Mexicans. And then after the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, after the War with Mexico, where Mexico lost half of its territory to the U.S., we call it the Mexican War. They call it la invasión de los norteamericanos, invasion of the North Americans. And so, one day they're Mexicans after the treaty, now they're Americans. And we've been here ever since. We have some Jaquez reunions. We hold them either here in San Luis or in Farmington, New Mexico. And we usually get 100, 200, 250 people. A lot of Jaquez, and a lot of noise, and a lot of laughter and stuff. And so a lot of fun. And as for me, my background is I'm a teacher. I'm a retired teacher. I went to school at Adams State. That's where I got my BA degree. I got it in physics with minors in chemistry and math. And I wish I had done biology and archaeology and geology, and if they would have had it, meteorology. So I like all those things. Then I went to the military for 3 years, and I served in Vietnam, and came back. And usually I don't talk too much about Vietnam because we were not heroes. That's for damn sure. I remember at Stapleton Airport. I remember wiping spit off my uniform. I was going like, what's wrong with these people going to the bathroom wiping off spit? So that's the way I see my Vietnam experience. It was like, we were bad people. We went to Vietnam and came back, and even then, our fellow Americans were spitting on us. And so then, I went to UNC, University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, and I got my master's in physics there, and also got a teaching degree. And I came to teach here at Centennial in San Luis. And that for about the first 5 years, I would say the Pledge of Allegiance like at basketball games, but I would not say it. I wouldn't say it because I go, that's not right, Now I'm okay, I got over it. So I taught here for 32 years, and I was wondering when I was going to retire, and this one guy called me one day and he says, "Charlie, I want your job." And we worked it out. By the end of that year, he did take over my job, and I retired. I'm married. I married a special education teacher. Her name is Kathleen Louise Deering from Colorado Springs. And she knows probably every teacher in the San Luis Valley, and she knows any kid that's in a wheelchair. She knows them. It's just incredible. And we have two boys. Our eldest, his name is Carlos, and he's a third-year medical student. He wants to be a family practice doc, and he even talks about he'd like to come to San Luis. And I hope he does at least for a while because we don't have a doctor here and we probably never will. And then our youngest, his name is David, and he's working he got his degree in environmental biology from the University of Colorado Boulder. And he's working for Amazon right now, but he'd like to go on to graduate school. This land was Ute country, where we are right now. This was Ute country. The Sangre de Cristo land grant was Ute country. And then the Spaniards came, and eventually it's Mexican, when Mexico gained its independence from Spain. And so Spain, of course, put the flag in the ground and declared this, we possess this land in the name of the King of Spain. And then it passed on possession of the land, passed on to Mexico. And then Mexico did the Sangre de Cristo land grant in 1844 to Carlos Bobian. And so now we have title to the land, and my ancestors came as original settlers, and we settled here and on one of their descendants, one of their many descendants. But if you go back far enough, any time in history, you're going to get to an injustice of when it comes to possession of land, because that's what humans do. They just take it from somebody else, and we have world wars and we have other wars, and that's usually what it boils down to: is I want what you have, and I'm going to take it, even if I have to kill you. We on the Land Rights Council, since I've been a member of the Land Rights Council since 1981, and we have had different land conferences and gatherings and meetings, and we several times we have invited Native Americans, especially with a medicine man, and we do what we call reconciliation ceremonies. We did one right here at the Vera. Well, twice we did at the Vera, right there by the Culebra Creek, by the water and the mountains in the background. It was gorgeous, and asked for forgiveness for what we did to them. I mean, where are they now? They're in reservations. They're in reservations, and we're not. So, are there injustices there? Yes, there's no doubt about it. So what we're fighting for here in the courts is rights that were given to us by a legitimate government. That government was the government of Mexico, and they gave us the right to use the mountain tract, to use the Vera. We could use the mountains for hunting, fishing, wood gathering, timbering, grazing of livestock. And so the battle that we have had through the Land Rights Council over the past almost 40 years was to regain those rights that were given to those original settlers by a legitimate government. They depended on that mountain for various things, but it was sustenance. They could hunt up there, and that way they didn't have to, get rid of all their, their stock like cows and people like my grandpa's mom. Her name was what was her name? But they used to call her Mamá Negra, Piedad Esquivel. She was a character. She kept telling my tío Feliz, her husband, we need some meat. And of course he had other things to do, and I know I'm getting off story here, but just to tell you what she did. So finally one day she went with her knife and she went and stabbed the cow. And she told my tío Feliz, the cow's dying. And so he went and slaughtered the cow and they had meat. But so they would go up to the mountains to hunt and fish, but they could also take their livestock up there in the summer so that they wouldn't have to use their pasture here at home, or down in their lands, on their lands. And people, all the houses, my house still is built out of adobe, just mud brick. And they had wood burning stoves. And so they had to go up there to get firewood. And even me as a young man and as a kid, we went up for firewood. Well, La Sierra had a lot of aspen, basically. So that was easy to cut and that, but it didn't burn that well. And some of the montes around here had pinon, and my mom always preferred pinon. So we would usually, in my family, we would go up here to the montes more so than we go up to the mountains. But the people without the mountains, this community would not have survived. I do believe that it would not have survived. There's the whole hunting, fishing, timbering, wood gathering, but there is also this aspect of the mountain as a sacred place. And sadly, our youth today I don't think they feel that, because to them, the mountains, la sierra, is like the wallpaper on your phone. It's basically it's just like a pretty picture, because they haven't been up there. You go up there, and there's some feeling. It's like a spiritual thing that you feel, and this community has that. I mean, some people go, "You guys are crazy about your mountains." Well, yeah, we're not crazy, but they need to be taken care of. Those mountains need to be respected, and they're a source of our water, which is our lifeblood. Without water, there's no farming, there's no agriculture, and this community probably really wouldn't exist. And so the importance of that mountain is profound. Once you've summited, it is a spiritual experience. You can see, whether you believe in God or not, you can see the creation around you that it's like that didn't happen by chance. It's like a spiritual thing. And I think that people in this community have that feeling about the mountains. It brings us water, it brings us life because of the water, because of the snow melt. And also the whole things I mentioned, the timbering and wood gathering and grazing, all those are still very important. How do they affect this community? Well, after Taylor bought the mountain and closed it off in 1960, there was quite a few people that moved out of here because they did not have access to that mountain, which was part of their agricultural scheme. How they could go up there to get wood, how they could take their livestock up there. And so we still talk about that, because there are some folks out there that believe that we should be dealing with a legal, lawsuit dealing with reparations. And injured groups talk about reparations. Native Americans deal with that, although most Native Americans have been granted reparation, but it's money and they will not take money. They say, "Give us the land back, we don't want your money." That mountain, the way we look at it, the mountain was raped by the Taylors. And yes, they made money. I don't know how much money they made off of it. But that logging was, they really did hurt us. Sure, the mountain looks bad because of that. You can see where they raked right through it. But what we're dealing with today even, is all the siltation that's coming down and clogging up the acequias, the ditches. Because there's really nothing to hold the runoff up there. I mean, there is, but not very much. They took those trees down, and those trees provide shade. They provide a root system that holds the water and lets it come down slowly so that we can use it for irrigation throughout the summer and into the fall, spring, summer, and part of the fall. So a lot of damage was done by that, and that's going to be there for a long, long time. Those truckers damaged the roads here. They had such heavy loads that you could tell. The road, where the wheels just sink in our pavements. They weren't designed for big heavy loads like that. And I remember I was part of a group called the Committee for Environmental Soundness, and you were part of that too. And we were trying to find if there's a way that we could stop them from bringing such heavy loads, so that they wouldn't ruin our bridges and our roads. And money talks. I was a young kid. I was in elementary school, and I knew there was something going on, but I didn't quite know what it was. And my grandpa Luterio Esquivel, he was the treasurer of the Asociación de Derechos Cívicos. So that was the little gang. They got together in Sao Paulo. They had this little house, and they would meet there. They'd throw in their $5 so they could get an attorney and fight fight for the rights of the ranch and fight Taylor. And it was a lost cause. I mean, it was little money, huge going against a very, very rich person. And so I would go sometimes to the meetings with him, and I didn't really know what they were doing. But later I figured out, that they really, and they were like the Marines in the sense that they went in this battle. They went out first and they got annihilated. Because like my grandpa Luterio had some land where I think Fernando Martinez might have that land, or he used to have that land there in Sao Paulo. That land does not have rights to the mountain. Those people, if you buy that land, or when Fernando had it, he could not get a key to the mountain because that land was part of the decision against, and that was like in 1965, that my grandpa and all those guys, they lost in court. And so they are banned forever, from that, from enjoying the fruits of the mountain like we do. I remember that there was like shootings in town, that the sheriff went and got Taylor and brought him to put him in jail, and some people were shooting at the courthouse. It just, again, people acting stupid is the way I look at it. I mean, really shooting. And he was not a good man. I mean, he was a rich man. He's lumber, they call him a lumber baron from North Carolina. And he did an interview with New Yorker magazine, and he talked about us, and he said he didn't like Mexicans and niggers, period. And then Mexicans, he said that we were inferior, and that's why we hung together. So that's some of the words that he used. And so we knew that there was a guy up there that, he pistol whipped, Lupe Medina and a couple of his friends. And we had had a meeting that was, we asked the lieutenant governor, I think, I forget his name, if he could mediate so we could have a meeting with Jack Taylor. And he did set it up, by golly. And so Jack Taylor came to Alamos out here, and there's some stakeholders from here. We went and met with them. So we were supposed to meet at this hotel. We got there. Well, no, the meeting has been moved. It was all like high drama, really. They moved for his security. And so we moved to another hotel. We went over there and we sat around waiting for him, and he finally showed up. Colorado State Patrol with all kinds of automatic weapons and pistols, and my Lord, it's like, what is this? It's like if war was about to break out or something. And then he looked at us, we looked at him, and he was just like a guy, and he looked at us, well, they're just like people. And then after that by then I think we demonized each other, both sides demonized each other, and so we talked at the table. We didn't get anything done, really, but what we did get done was to know that the guy he was a guy. His person. He wasn't some devil or anything like that. And he saw us, and so we might be Mexicans, but, we were just people, just people. And after that, we went and had lunch together. Other than that, we never did get anything accomplished, but I do remember that personally, that Colorado State Patrol came in there armed to the teeth to protect him, I always think about that. Really, that's not your job, guys. Serve and protect, not serve and protect Jack Taylor. Give me a break. So in that era, there is the Chicano movement that grows out there, and it is militant. We ain't taking shit from anybody, period. And a lot of people didn't like that. They go, hey, who are you? And I remember when I was a graduate student in Greeley, boycotting Safeway and Albertsons. Don't buy grapes, and it was the farmers boycott of grapes, and I forget, lettuce and stuff like that. Cesar Chavez, that whole movement, and people were mean with it. We'd hand them a flyer, and they throw it back at us and go back where you came from, Mexican. I remember telling people, well, I guess I better go back to San Luis. If I do what this guy wants. So there's that militancy, and sad to say, but I think that's what it took. That's what it took to get this thing going. There's people like Pete Espinosa, and he was one of those early leaders, and we're going so my grandpa Luterio and those guys with their Asociación de Derechos Cívicos, I mean, they tried, but they got their butts handed back to them in court, brutal, and so this Chicano movement, we ain't taking any of that shit. From their start, the Land Rights Council was formed in 1978 and incorporated in 79. By 1981, that's when I joined. I joined as a plaintiff, and I also got on the board. And we filed a class action lawsuit in March of 1981 against Jack Tarlin Taylor, the owner of La Sierra and the Mountain Tract, as he called it. And so we stuck it out. We fought it out for decades. I mean, we had legal teams that they were pro bono attorneys, and they were part of that militant leaning. That there was injustices that they were willing to fight for, and they knew that there was an injustice that happened here, and they fought for years. On our, we could never have done that if we had to pay attorneys like my grandpa Lute. They're putting in their $5 every Sunday. Those attorneys, they would charge millions and millions and millions of dollars. But they did it for free, pro bono, free. Wow. One of them, Jeff Goldstein, I remember they invited us to a dinner 25 years later, to dinner where they were honoring different attorneys in different groups, but he was one of them. It was a polarizing issue. People either with the Land Rights Council or against. My mom was like in the middle. She'd say, well, God will, if something there's been injustice, God will, he will ensure that justice is served. And I'm going like, Mom, I ain't waiting for God on this one. One day, one of my students, he tells me, Charlie, my dad said you're a communist. I go like, no, dude, I'm not a communist. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Catholic. And that was because some people, and Trump does that today, socialist, communist, anybody doesn't like, they're socialists or communists. And that kind of name branding was also going on there. And there were people like, in this community, they go like, Taylor paid greenbacks for that mountain. It's his mountain, leave him alone. And we're going like, he did pay greenbacks. But his title also says that it's subject to the rights of the local people for wood gathering, timbering, grazing, and other so-called settlement rights. And he signed that title with that phraseology in it. And that's why he paid, I was looking it up, as like $6.47 an acre. I mean, he got it for free, just about. Yeah, so my involvement with the Land Rights Council is, I signed on as a plaintiff. I signed up with a board, and I was on there for I was on the board for like 37, 38 years, and until I was term limited after 38 years. Well, anyways, how are you? And we have just, it's been a life experience because it's gone on so long. That's, we're going on 40 some years. And I remember, like I told you, Jeff Goldstein, our lead attorney in those days, he's going like, Charlie, we don't have a snowball chance in hell winning this case. And we're going, well, we got to try. It's important, don't you think? Oh, it's important. It's important. I'm just saying. Don't get your hopes up that high because, again, you have a snowball's chance. And we just had that celebration now this summer, and he got an award. And I remember going up there and at the microphone and telling him, "Hey, Jeff, isn't it great to be wrong every now and then?" He said we didn't have a snowball's chance in hell. We're in the case, and we won. So we took a lot of losses, and of the 109 plaintiffs that signed on in 1981, I'll bet you more than half of them have already died, have passed away. But believe it or not, in 2002, the Colorado Supreme Court said they found in our favor. We have the rights to grazing, wood gathering, and timbering, not hunting, fishing, or recreation, but those are written in stone in perpetuity for us and for those that follow us, our descendants. And the Land Rights Council does catch some flack for that because, yes, we did fight for 30, 40 years. And originally what we went for was we wanted these rights to be restored to heirs of the land grant. The American legal system, Colorado Supreme Court, instead of finding for the heirs, they found for the successors in title, which in my case, I'm a successor in title and I'm an heir, so it fits. But there's some people that just moved in from Tennessee, wherever, and they bought an acreage here, maybe north of town. They also get the key because they weren't heirs of the original settlers, but they are successors in title if that land was part of the Vada strips. So some people do hold that against us in the Land Rights Council. You guys didn't do your job completely, and no, we didn't, but we did the best that we could. And even today, there's still legal wrangling going on, between the ranch and between our attorneys, and but we've come a long ways. We've come a long ways, and the case is important not just to us, but to other land grants, other land grant communities. Here in Colorado, we have 7 land grants. New Mexico has like 295. Those are Mexican land grants. Then there's Spanish land grants, which is another story entirely. That was when Spain was giving land grants. But these are Mexican land grants. And so we set a precedent. So I'm talking about Don Apolinar Rael and Juan Lacombe. They're buddies, they're buddies. And I did not interact very much with Mr. Lacombe, whereas Don Apolinar was my neighbor. And I used to go to his house, he'd come to my house, and of course at one time I was president of the Land Rights Council for like about a decade, and we didn't have an office, so we used to meet at my house. And sometimes he'd tell me to go and pick him up, and he lives a whole mile away, so I'd go pick him up, and or sometimes his truck didn't work that good, so I had to go and drive the little truck. But they were the spiritual force behind the Land Rights Council, to get that whole militant action and keep it like in check, I think. Although sometimes they'd say some pretty crazy stuff like, hell with it, let's get our rifles, let's go up there and shoot up the place. And no. But they had that passion, Although they go like, we're not going to go up there and shoot up the place. It ain't going to happen. That just doesn't work today. But so they were elders. They were the ones that set the vision for us, so that we wouldn't go all crazy and probably fail. So I really appreciate that Don Apolinar and Juan Lacombe were that involved. I'll give you an example of something that they believed in this. They had a passion for it. At one time, so the Vera here is part of the commons land that people use. So they graze their animals, and so the commissioners went and we used to use. I remember for Santana having baseball games there, and I remember we used to play against the Mexican Nationals. That's one of the groups, teams that was to play. And there's these old guys, farm workers from the Fort Garland area, and us all young and strong, and we'll tear these guys up. And the problem was that they were so good at it, like I remember pitching, throwing a pitch at a guy, and it went straight to his face. So, and he just waited for it, batted it out of the way. So they would hit like what would be a home run, and they get to like second base because they were too old and all that. But so the commissioners went and they set up a rodeo ground there, had stands and fences and corrals and the whole thing. Don Apolinar and Juan Lacombe went and tore down. They got their tractors and they tore down, and nobody said anything about it. Because it said, this is not for rodeos. This is for grazing. That's the original intent, and that's the way it has to stay. Jack Taylor, at one point when he had when we had lost and he had won, found against us for costs, and so we owed him something like $16,000, and we're going, $16,000, my Lord, how are we going to come up with that much money? And we did. We chipped in, and some people gave. There were donations and fundraisings, and so we did get that amount. It turns out we never did have to give it to Taylor, because then we appealed and then moved on until we eventually won, and so he never got any of those costs. But the lawyers also did fundraising on their own, and they had the Lawyers Guild, and I forget some of the other groups, and so they raised some money, and so we had what we called a war chest, and the war chest was that we thought we would need money to go all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and so as it turned out, after the Colorado Supreme Court in 2002 found in our favor, that was it. Now, the ranch, they tried. They filed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they were not granted certiorari. So that just means the U.S. Supreme Court said, we have read your case, and we're not going to hear it. And that means that they upheld the Colorado Supreme Court, and Chalia, there it is. It's done. And so in this 2018 hearing, and I think that's the one that was up in Denver. I'm thinking there's the one in San Luis just not too long in September about, so the one in 2018, that's where I remember a justice asking, wood gathering, so what's that all about? And people still burn wood, and the lawyer's going, Your Honor, people have wood burning stoves over there. He's going like, whoa, how about that? But there is where I think Cielo Vista Ranch came to a reckoning. They were not going to win this case. They were not going to win an appeal. It wasn't going to happen. And when we had the hearing here this last September, the judge is saying, if people haven't come forward and don't have a key yet, but they meet the criteria, they still can. They can still do that. I was just looking at a newspaper clipping this morning about the mountain was listed on the website of Sotheby's. What is that? Auction. Yeah, and they auction off big diamonds, big ranches, big stuff. And Cielo Vista Ranch, La Sierra, was on there. Well, so anyway, so this guy buys it, William Harrison, and we're working with the guy. I mean, that's really, really something. That's a big breakthrough. We have met in this room right here. And he sits there and he talks and we talk and we ask questions and we have lunch and then we come back and do it again. But what brought that on was he said, I remember he sent a letter to the Land Rights Council and I think to the community as well. And it was, it was like a quid pro quo kind of thing, since that's what's in the news right now. Um, I'll drop any appeals if you will, if we'll have agree to have a set of meetings and let's see if we can talk things out. We were like, heck yeah, let's do that. And so we've had a few of those meetings, and hopefully something comes of this. We're talking about important things. We're talking about things like grazing and not overgrazing. We're talking about the pressure put on by deer and elk and the pressure put on by cattle. We're talking about areas that do get overgrazed. We're talking about roads that are not maintained, that if there is a forest fire, they're not going to be able to get up there anyway because the roads are in really bad shape. We've talked about the possibility of a big forest fire like we had last summer or summer before. And we were told by some of the experts that came from like the Bureau of Land Management or somebody like that, Forest Service, and they go, if that mountain catches on fire, and it's due to catch fire because there's lots of fuel and there hasn't been a fire there for decades, it's not a question of if, but when. And when it does burn, federal resources and state resources are not going to be put in here because there are no people living up there. There are no structures. They're going to let it burn. And so we talked to Mr. Harrison about that. You know, if that mountain burns, your investment is, man, you're gonna lose some dollars. So it's in our best interest to keep the mountain healthy. We need to take care of it. We need to respect it. We need to work together. We need to cooperate, which we have not done, for historically. So the settlers, their agreement was, we'll come over here and we'll settle, because Bobian said, I will grant you land if you come and settle here. It has to be a permanent settlement. Because there's a grant here in the Valle, San Luis Valley, that's earlier than the San Luis Cristo land grant. That's Conejos grant right across the Rio Grande. But they didn't settle it like the agreement was, and so that land grant never happened, And whereas the San Luis Cristo land grant, people did come and settle, and they stayed even though there was people that other forces that tried to get them out. And I'm not talking about the Native Americans. The Native Americans, they're out of the picture at this point. I'm sad to say, but. So, like I mentioned before, the Mexican government, a legitimate government, granted certain rights to the people that came and settled here. And then those rights, after the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, after the war between the U.S. and Mexico, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo upheld those rights. And they're the same rights that I mentioned that are in Taylor's deed, his original deed, that this land is subject to the rights of the local people to graze, wood gather, timbering, and other so-called settlement rights, whatever that is. So the importance of that is that for once, maybe 2 or 3 times, but the U.S. actually upheld part of a treaty that signed. They upheld that part of the treaty, that they would respect our religion and our language and our property rights, and where are we on that? It really hasn't happened. We had the English only initiative years ago where they were going to get rid of all the Spanish in the ballots and no Spanish in schools and all that kind of crap. But Bovian, being pretty sharp, he got his land patented, and that was 1880 or so. So the U.S. government upheld that it was a legal grant. The Land Rights Council has tried to speak in behalf of the community, and a lot of that community, people that are not going to speak up for themselves. They are not. They are not going to. They're not going to go to meetings, and they're not going to donate money, and they're not going to sign petitions and all that kind of stuff. Not out of fear. They just don't do it. Our community here is kind of like a passive aggressive. Like my mom would like I told him, my mom said, if there's been injustice, God will see that it is corrected. And, and I'm going like, Mom, I ain't waiting for God to help us out on this one. Well, and God did help on this one, I believe. But what is Land Rights Council doing? Well, we're trying to soothe feelings and ruffle feathers, because it's a political issue as well, and we take political sides. And some, like I've told you, there's some people that he paid greenback dollars for it. Leave him alone. It's his. And others that said, look, we had rights and we lost them because somebody went to court and erased those rights. That's not correct. Let's get those rights back. So we did get them back. We got them back for some people that don't even know what what's the history of this lawsuit, and then they're trying to sell their property, and they're having real estate agents saying, this property comes with special, very, very special appurtenances, or I forget what they call them, but if you buy this property, you get the key to that mountain up there. You can get to go up there, and so it raises the property value. Those are things that we did not. I mean, we didn't file a lawsuit so we could raise the value of our property, but those are some of the things that are like the consequences of this lawsuit. How do we get youth involvement? And it is really tough. It's really tough. Our youth are very, very, they're very savvy about what's going on in life. Like when we were youngsters, we were like innocentes, really. I mean, we were more innocent in those days. These kids today are they know what's going on in the world. They're very connected through their cell phones and their social media, and it has its pluses and minuses, but they are very connected, and they're experts. They're experts in that media, whereas my generation, we're like, I got a cell phone, but shit, I don't know how to use it, So we try to get youth on our board, and get somebody to come to a meeting or two. We tried it over here with this group that's meeting, stakeholders meeting with William Harrison, and we've had 2 or 3 or 4 kids, and they're very vocal. They're great, but they're not going. It's a struggle to keep them on as like permanent board members or permanent members of a particular group. So we have to keep trying, because the thing that we see is these kids are leaving. They're leaving here. My sons, they're in Denver now, and they went to school in Boulder and Fort Collins, and are they coming back to San Luis to be citizens here in San Luis? I doubt it. I really doubt it. They love it here, but the economic opportunities pretty slim here in San Luis. Pretty slim. So we're trying to entice kids to stay, or to help us where they can, and but they're very busy. Especially if you're in school, in a small school like here at San Daniel or Sierra Grande. Kids are in everything. They're in sports. They're in student council. They're class officers. They're doing this. They're doing that. Even service projects and all that. They're very, very busy individuals, and it's hard to get them involved in these kind of groups that deal with issues. So we'll keep trying. They're our future.